Have you ever scrolled through dating apps or social media and thought, I can do better than this? Or maybe you've rejected someone amazing because they didn't tick every single box on your list. What if I told you your own dating standards might be the reason love isn't lasting for you? Today, we're uncovering the shocking truth about how our so called standards are quietly destroying relationships. When we talk about dating, one of the biggest silent killers of relationships is unrealistic expectations. It starts innocently enough. We think we know exactly what we want: someone attractive, ambitious, kind, funny, and perfectly compatible in every way. On paper, it sounds reasonable, but the truth is, these lists often become unattainable ideals that no human can fully live up to. The problem isn't wanting someone good for you, it's wanting someone flawless, someone who fits every imaginary standard we've built over time. Social media, movies, and stories from friends feed this notion that love should feel effortless, exciting, and perfect from day one. We begin expecting our partners to be flawless versions of ourselves, always understanding, always supporting, always charming. And when they fall short, which they inevitably will, we feel disappointment, frustration, and even resentment, as if the fault lies entirely with them. Unrealistic expectations also create a kind of rigidity that prevents growth. Love is never about finding someone who already meets every single criterion. It's about growing together, adapting, and learning to complement each other. But when we insist on a partner who already ticks every box, we forget that relationships are messy and imperfect by nature. Small flaws, quirks, and mistakes are part of being human, yet we often interpret them as failures. For example, someone might be incredibly loving and supportive, but because they don't meet some arbitrary standard, maybe they don't have the exact career, look, or social status we imagined, we write them off. This mindset stops people from seeing the richness and depth of real connection and replaces it with a checklist mentality where love is conditional rather than unconditional. Moreover, unrealistic expectations can create emotional distance. When we expect perfection, we are rarely vulnerable ourselves because vulnerability feels risky. We're constantly measuring whether someone is good enough rather than allowing ourselves to be fully seen. This creates a cycle where intimacy is stunted. Partners may start feeling like they can never satisfy us, and we start feeling like we can never find what we're looking for. The irony is that the more we chase perfection, the further real love slips away, leaving us frustrated and lonely despite being in relationships. Expectations meant to protect us slowly become walls that isolate us from the very love we are searching for. One of the quietest yet most destructive forces in modern relationships is what I like to call the comparison trap. It starts almost innocently. You see a friend's relationship on social media, or a couple in a movie seems to have it all together, and suddenly you find yourself thinking, why can't my relationship look like that? At first, it feels harmless, just inspiration, but slowly it seeps in and begins to poison the way you view your partner and your connection. Social media is designed to show only the highlights: perfectly curated pictures, romantic vacations, late night laughter captured in a single frame, and love stories told in 60-second clips. Rarely do we see the arguments, the small compromises, or the moments of doubt and vulnerability that truly make relationships human. And yet, we measure our entire love life against these snapshots, forgetting that what we're comparing is often an illusion, a version of reality edited to impress, not a reflection of genuine connection. The comparison trap doesn't just exist online, it also thrives in everyday life. Friends casually drop stories about their perfect partners or their effortless relationship milestones. And without realizing it, we begin holding our own partner to these invisible, unspoken standards. Suddenly, a small disagreement feels monumental, a minor flaw becomes a deal breaker, and every tiny imperfection is magnified because it doesn't match the ideal we've internalized. What's even more dangerous is that this comparison isn't rational, it's emotional. It makes us forget why we chose our partner in the first place, why their quirks and flaws once felt charming, and why real love is never about perfection, but about connection, patience, and understanding. The trap also shifts our focus from appreciation to criticism. Instead of noticing the ways our partner supports us, loves us, and grows with us, we start counting the ways they fall short, measuring them against an impossible standard we picked up somewhere else. It makes relationships feel like competitions or projects rather than spaces of safety, warmth, and intimacy. And the irony is that this constant comparison doesn't just hurt the partner, it hurts us. It keeps us in a perpetual state of dissatisfaction, longing for something better, while overlooking the beauty and depth of what's right in front of us. Once trapped in this cycle, it becomes increasingly difficult to be fully present. Every smile, every gesture, and every conversation is filtered through the lens of comparison, making it almost impossible to appreciate authenticity. We forget that love isn't about being the best relationship externally, it's about being right for each other internally. One of the biggest barriers to lasting love is what I call the fear of compromise. On the surface, compromise sounds simple and even necessary in relationships, but in today's world, it's often misunderstood as settling or losing yourself. Many people think that if they bend, if they adjust to their partner's needs or habits, they are somehow giving up too much or being weak. So instead, they hold rigidly to their preferences, their routines, their ideals, thinking that compromise is a sign of vulnerability or a threat to their independence. But the truth is, relationships are not about rigidity, they are about flexibility. Two people can be strong, independent individuals and still grow together by finding middle ground. Fear of compromise turns love into a battlefield where every difference feels like a confrontation and every need for adjustment feels like a sacrifice too big to bear. Fear of compromise also stems from an unrealistic desire for control. We want everything to go perfectly, our way, on our timeline, with no deviations. But love, by its very nature, requires adaptability. A partner will have habits we don't understand, routines we don't like, or perspectives that clash with our own. When we refuse to compromise, even in small ways, we create tension where there should be connection. Minor disagreements become mountains, small misunderstandings grow into resentments, and the relationship loses its natural rhythm. The irony is that compromise doesn't mean losing. It means choosing love over ego, choosing connection over rigidity, choosing growth over stagnation. Without it, even the most compatible couple can drift apart simply because neither was willing to bend enough to meet the other halfway. Another hidden consequence of the fear of compromise is the emotional distance it creates. When we refuse to adjust, our partners feel unseen, unheard, and unvalued. They begin to withdraw, thinking that their needs or perspectives are never going to matter. Meanwhile, we remain frustrated that they aren't trying hard enough or aren't the person we wanted them to be. This creates a vicious cycle. The more we resist, the more they retreat, and the more we criticize, the more we feel dissatisfied. Compromise isn't about erasing your identity, it's about building a space where both people can be themselves while still nurturing the relationship. Fear of compromise also blinds us to growth. Relationships are not static. They are meant to challenge us, push our boundaries, and teach us patience, empathy, and understanding. When we cling too tightly to our own way, we rob ourselves of the lessons that come from meeting someone else in the middle. The relationship becomes less about partnership and more about negotiation, and love loses its natural ease. One of the most subtle yet damaging patterns in relationships is emotional unavailability. It doesn't always look dramatic or obvious. Sometimes it's quiet, almost invisible, until it quietly erodes the foundation of love. Emotional unavailability isn't about not loving someone, it's about not being able or willing to fully show up and share your inner world. It's the walls people build around their hearts because they've been hurt before, because vulnerability feels risky, or because they've been conditioned to believe that expressing emotions is a weakness. And in today's dating culture, emotional unavailability is more common than ever. People are chasing independence, success, or personal freedom. And while those things are valuable, they sometimes come at the cost of true connection. Partners crave depth, reassurance, and intimacy. But when one person consistently keeps their emotions locked away, love feels incomplete, one sided, and unsatisfying. Emotional unavailability can show up in subtle ways. A partner might avoid difficult conversations, shy away from expressing affection, or dismiss feelings that feel too heavy or inconvenient. They may be present physically but absent emotionally, always keeping a safe distance that prevents real closeness. For the person on the receiving end, this can feel confusing and painful, like they're constantly giving but rarely receiving, constantly trying to bridge a gap that seems impossible to cross. Over time, the emotionally unavailable partner becomes a source of frustration rather than comfort, not because they lack love entirely, but because their love is restricted, rationed, or conditional. And often, emotional unavailability is mistaken for a character flaw rather than a defense mechanism, making the partner on the outside feel inadequate or undeserving, even when that isn't the case. The dangerous thing about emotional unavailability is that it's often invisible until it's too late. It can hide behind charm, humor, or even apparent attentiveness. Someone can be a perfect partner on paper, successful, attractive, kind, yet remain emotionally distant in ways that prevent a deep, meaningful connection. The more a person resists opening up, the more the other partner feels isolated, lonely, or unseen. And this isn't just a problem for the partner, it also prevents the emotionally unavailable person from experiencing the fullness of love. They may crave intimacy and connection, but their fear of vulnerability keeps them trapped in a cycle of surface level relationships, leaving both people yearning for something that could have been profound. Emotional unavailability also limits growth. Relationships are meant to challenge, teach, and transform us. They require openness, honesty, and the courage to share your heart even when it's scary. When someone refuses to be emotionally present, the relationship loses its depth and becomes transactional, safe, and shallow. Love is no longer a shared journey. It becomes an echo of what could have been, a reflection of walls built instead of bridges. One of the most overlooked reasons relationships fail today is what I call the love versus checklist problem. Many people enter the dating world with a mental list of must haves and deal breakers, believing that if someone meets all the criteria, love will naturally follow. We check for the right career, the right looks, the right education, the right habits, and sometimes even the right social circle. But what we often fail to realize is that love doesn't exist on paper. It can't be measured by qualifications, possessions, or the number of boxes someone ticks. Love exists in the messy, intangible space between two people, a space of understanding, compromise, connection, and shared vulnerability. When dating becomes more about the checklist than the chemistry, intimacy suffers and relationships turn into transactional arrangements rather than partnerships built on genuine connection. The danger of living by a checklist is that it blinds us to the human behind it. Someone might not have the perfect job, the exact hobby, or the ideal social life, but they could be the most loyal, caring, and emotionally available person we've ever met. Yet, because they fail to meet a box on the list, they are overlooked, rejected, or dismissed. This mindset encourages superficiality, reducing love to a series of qualifications rather than the deep, unpredictable, and emotional journey it truly is. In a world obsessed with finding the perfect match, we forget that perfect matches aren't found, they're built. They're created through patience, empathy, compromise, and a willingness to embrace imperfection. Without that, we chase ideals instead of people, expectations instead of experiences, and fantasy instead of reality. Checklists also prevent us from seeing potential growth. Real relationships are not about finding someone who already fits seamlessly into our lives. They're about finding someone who challenges us, complements us, and grows with us. When we prioritize lists over hearts, we miss opportunities to learn, adapt, and build something lasting. Relationships are about two imperfect people choosing each other every day, not two perfect people who happen to align on every preference. The more rigid the checklist, the less room there is for spontaneity, forgiveness, and understanding, all of which are essential for intimacy. The love versus checklist problem also fosters dissatisfaction. Even when we meet someone who checks most of the boxes, we remain focused on the gaps, the missing items, or the areas that don't match our ideal. This focus shifts the relationship from gratitude to judgment, from connection to comparison. We start asking, does this person meet all my expectations? Instead of asking, does this person make me feel safe, understood, and loved? And in doing so, we confuse love with convenience, affection with achievement, and connection with qualification. One of the most overlooked reasons modern relationships struggle is the influence of instant gratification culture. We live in a world where everything is available immediately: food, entertainment, shopping, information, even validation from social media. This environment has shaped the way we approach love, subtly teaching us to expect relationships to always be exciting, easy, and perfectly rewarding from the start. The moment things feel challenging, complicated, or mundane, we become restless. We scroll, compare, or even walk away, thinking that something better is just a swipe or click away. The problem is that love, unlike apps or instant deliveries, does not work on demand. It requires patience, effort, and the willingness to stay committed even when emotions fluctuate, excitement fades, or conflicts arise. Instant gratification culture fosters a mindset where relationships are seen as transactions rather than journeys. We begin to evaluate love based on immediate satisfaction rather than long term fulfillment. If a partner doesn't text back quickly, or if a date isn't thrilling enough, we start doubting the relationship. The more accustomed we become to quick rewards in other areas of life, the less tolerant we are of the natural rhythms of love, arguments, misunderstandings, and the slow, steady process of building trust and intimacy. In essence, the desire for instant perfection creates impatience, making couples overlook the small, meaningful moments that actually sustain love over time, like shared struggles, support during hard times, or the quiet comfort of simply being together. Another consequence of this culture is that it encourages superficiality. When the expectation is constant excitement, we chase novelty instead of depth. A relationship becomes a series of highlights rather than a foundation, where emotional connection, loyalty, and shared history take a back seat to the thrill of immediate pleasure. People may leave a relationship because it feels routine or boring, not realizing that routine is what actually allows trust, consistency, and emotional security to grow. Over time, this erodes the ability to commit, to invest emotionally, and to experience the slow, rewarding growth that comes from navigating life with someone consistently. Instant gratification also impacts self reflection. We avoid working through difficulties, addressing communication issues, or learning from conflict because those processes take time and patience. Instead, we search for quick fixes, someone who fits immediately, someone who entertains instantly, someone who checks all boxes without effort. But relationships aren't meant to be instant. They are meant to challenge us, teach us, and grow with us, requiring emotional labor, understanding, and time to flourish. At the end of the day, it's clear that dating standards, when taken to extremes, often do more harm than good. Unrealistic expectations, constant comparisons, fear of compromise, the pull of instant gratification, emotional unavailability, and rigid checklists. All of these create barriers that prevent real love from growing. Love isn't about finding perfection on paper or someone who fits every box. It's about finding someone who sees you, accepts you, and chooses you every single day. Real relationships require patience, vulnerability, and the courage to embrace imperfection, both in ourselves and in our partners. When we let go of unrealistic standards and open our hearts, we create space for connection, growth, and intimacy that can't be measured by lists or comparisons. Love becomes less about checking off criteria and more about choosing each other, learning together, and building a life that feels meaningful, supportive, and deeply fulfilling. The walls we build with our expectations may feel protective, but often they keep the very love we're searching for just out of reach. By shifting our focus from perfection to connection, from conditions to commitment, we give ourselves the chance to experience love in its truest, most beautiful form.